So y'all, picture this. You're making 6 figs. I'm not talking about 100K. I'm talking about you making probably 300K. You in a beautiful apartment. You know what I'm saying? You got all the beautiful landscape. You see the skyscrapers where you at because, of course, you're in a big city. And everyone around you thinks that you got it all figured out. Nobody can tell you anything. That's how you feel. But every morning, you just wake up in a cold sweat, to be honest, wondering when they're all going to realize you just winging it, to be honest. And that's terror, to be real with y'all. The constant fear of being found out. So someone who went through that was Joan Clayton. She lived it every single day for really 8 seasons. And if watching her made your chest tight with that recognition, then we need to talk. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. Success doesn't cure imposter phenomenon. Sometimes it makes it worse. The perfect prison when excellence becomes your enemy. Let me blow your mind with something. See, Joan Clayton just wasn't successful, right? She was trapped by her success. Every achievement became evidence, right? That she was one mistake away from losing everything she had built. See, Joan, she represented something terrifying that most of us won't say out loud. What if you achieve everything you thought you wanted and still feel like a fraud? What if the corner office, right, with the big old window looking at the skyscrapers, right, that the designer clothes wearing the Gucci, the Louis, the Fendi, the Prada, give me some more, you know what I'm saying? And then just the prestige and respect from the colleagues, everybody looking at you. What if none of that actually makes you feel worthy? See, if that question just made your stomach drop, keep watching, because it just might be for you. See, Joan's story isn't just TV drama. It's a masterclass in what happens when perfectionism becomes your prison warden. The Perfectionist Playbook, Joan's Deadly Patterns. Here's how Joan's imposter phenomenon actually worked, right? And I guarantee you're going to see yourself in this, all right, just a little bit. So here's the first pattern. You over-prepare. It's like you are gearing up for the over-preparation Olympics. I'm saying, see, Joan didn't just prep for meetings. She never did. Joan was an over-analyzed critical thinker. She would research something. Then she's going to figure out everything about the client, from the client's favorite color to the client's favorite coffee, you know what I'm saying, to who the client used to date, right? And just be all up in client's business. That was just Joan. And she would memorize where they went to college. She would have for backup plans for every possible conversation she was thinking about it in her head. Pattern 2, moving the goalposts, right? So when I talk about that, I'm talking about, right? And once again, if you see yourself, please let me know. Let's say you got the promotion, right? And that's great. You get it. Now you worry about whether you deserve it or not, right? Who's ever got a promotion and then they're like, damn, I got this. And then 1 minute later, you was like, do I really deserve this? So the case going well, right? This is perfect. Then panic comes from this. Now panic about the next one. And the success wasn't just a success, right? It was just borrowed time before we all know what might happen or what we think happened. The exposure happens. And then here's a pattern 3. And this one really can get you, especially when it came to Joan, right? She turned every single mistake into a big old thing. It was a catastrophe, right? It was, let me do it. I'm talking about, man, it was terrible. It was a big old mistake. It was bad. She didn't like it. She would make what they say, that she would make a mountain out of a molehill. What is that? Or I'm talking about, man. Y'all know that she would take the littlest thing and then it would be an overkill, right? If she messed up something, she would, nah, that couldn't have happened. Or she basically felt like she was incompetent the whole time, right? When the restaurant was struggling, that was showing her evidence that she's a failure at everything outside of law, right? One bad date. That means that what, Joan, she can't have no man. She's unlovable. She was on that whole tip to where she's not going to date anybody, even though she still wanted to be with somebody. Does that sound familiar? How many of you are watching this and I just felt like I'm personally attacking you? Well, I'm not. Okay, I'm just talking about Joan here. Right. And this is what we realized even about the restaurant and the revelation that came with that. Right. Because this is where I'm saying we got to talk about the J spot. Do y'all remember Joan and that whole J spot thing? Because I know I do. To be honest with y'all, when I was watching Girlfriend, because like I said, I came to watch Girlfriends later on. I didn't watch it, of course, when I was out. I was a little kid. And I would not even understand everything that was going on. But I started watching Girlfriends as an adult. And I was like, what the heck made her do that? She was not even just a regular lawyer. She was a successful lawyer. Not even that. I could get this. I'm not making no money from doing this. I don't know if I'm going to do it. She was successful. Another thing, too, is I don't have money, y'all. The fact that she was able to do that with the restaurant, she quit and then she was all good. She had money. She was setting herself up, right? But let's just talk about the J spot. Because I still think that I love that she did it, but I still think she was kind of. But I get why she did it. But because it wasn't like she was making a bad business decision, even though they say restaurants have a high failure rate, and she really didn't have any connections in that world or really no real reason knowing why she did that. But what I believe why she did it is because it was because of imposter phenomenon. It was. Okay. So imposter phenomenon nearly destroyed her entire identity. For real. If you really think about it, like I said, she was killing it as a lawyer. She was very successful. Y'all remember William? I want to talk about William a little bit, but he was jealous of Joan. That's how much she was killing it, right? She was making a lot of money, not even a little bit of money, but making a lot of money. She was respected by everybody. She was living the best professional life you could probably live. Y'all remember Molly from Insecure? Molly probably looked up to Joan. She was probably looking at girlfriends. You know what? I want to be a lawyer. Probably did. Now that I think about that, that's probably real life what would have happened. So what does imposter phenomenon tell her to do? Prove yourself in a completely different field where you have zero experience, because that's exactly what that girl did. She was going through basically so much self-doubt in herself that she said that she has to do something else. And this is exactly what imposter phenomenon does. It makes you believe the success in one area is just luck. So you need to prove yourself everywhere else too. See, Joan, she couldn't just be an excellent lawyer, right? She had to be an excellent at everything, or she would feel like she don't deserve it. She's a fraud. She's a fake. She's a phony. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to believe her. They're going to expose her. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what was happening there. And when the restaurant started, it was getting off to a good start. It really was. But then with everything, there's ups and downs. And then when that restaurant started to struggle, restaurants are fucking hard, you know what I'm saying, from what everybody else has said about it. But they do it because they love it, you know what I'm saying. But the restaurant started to struggle and it started being really hard. Joan started to spaz the fuck out. Even though she had no zero experience. Mind you, it was still doing good when you really look at it. She had good press. She was taking pictures. Everybody was coming in there. It was a hot spot. But when it started to struggle, Joan didn't see that as a normal business challenge, right? She saw that as a confirmation that something that she probably always feared, but maybe as everyone thought she was, maybe she wasn't as capable as she thought she was. And once again, Joan being who she is, in this case, a perfectionist, that's one of the types of imposter syndromes, or I guess you say categories, or I could say really personalities. That's a better way to phrase it, that she was, all right? And her being a perfectionist actually caused many different things to happen in her life, y'all. So, for example, the relationships, as far as what Joan had. And Joan's story, in a way, she's like the main character in a way, and it's kind of sad in a way, heartbreaking to a matter of fact, because her perfectionism, her trying to be perfect at every single thing, of course, as you saw, it made her do different things. And sometimes it made her, when she was first trying to climb up, it made her do a lot of different things. And then when she left, it made her do some things that she probably regretted. But it impacted her career. But it also, you could argue, poisoned all of her relationships. If y'all remember Joan, and it's crazy because what Joan did in the early 2000s is what everybody's doing now. In a way, but everybody's talking about dating checklists, right? Impossible standards, the way she sabotaged good relationships because they didn't match the perfect timeline, that was, is that romance? I don't even know what you call that, right? I don't think that's romance, y'all. That was a terror that if someone really got to know her, they'll discover she wasn't worthy of her love. She was self-sabotage in that type of way. And even if you think about her friendships, which we will talk about everybody else, but even with her friendships, Joan pushed away many of her friends, Tony, Maya, Lynn, some type of capacity. She did push them away at some point in time. Whenever they saw through that perfect facade, they knew was, nah, that ain't Joan, because they know the real her, right? It was basically that pushing away was imposter phenomenon happening. And I mentioned, right, imposter phenomenon is self-doubt. It's all mental. But what happens with it being mental is that those mental things lead to actions, which then those actions will impact those behaviors. And that's one of those things that comes, right, in Joan's case. If I keep everyone at a certain distance away, right, they can't get close enough to see that I'm actually a fake and that I'm actually a fraud. I'm not actually perfect. I'm not actually the best at which y'all think I am, right? How many of y'all have ended relationships not because they were bad, but because you were terrified that they'll figure out you weren't as amazing as you thought? And that was the story of Joan's life, from friendships, but definitely with relationships. And me looking at Joan, like I said, I'm looking at it as an adult. I'm looking at this as a friend. I'm looking at this trying to be your coach here to get you through this imposter phenomenon. This is what I think I would have said to Joan. You never know until you actually in person. But what I think I would have said to Joan, if Joan was supposed to come talk to me on Zoom, or if I was supposed to pop up out there, you know what I'm saying, I would have probably said, and this is what I really tell anybody. So if you are falling in line with Joan's character, or if you're a perfectionist watching this, it's probably what I would say. I would say, first, Joan, you're saying you're a perfectionist. That's the first thing I got to do. I got to figure out which one you are. And I think you're a perfectionist. And then I would realize, how is it being a perfectionist? Do you feel like that's protecting you, right? If you feel like, if she says no, it's not, which in this case, you might have said no, it's not, I would say, okay, you probably feel like you're in a prison, right? Because you feel like you have to be perfect. And that's the crazy thing about it, right? You feel like you have to be perfect every single time you're in a prison. And you locking yourself up. You know what I'm saying? You locking yourself up. You got the key. It's a prison that you created for yourself. You got the key. You can actually walk out this motherfucker right now. Every time you over prepare, Joan, every time you over deliver, every time you over stress, you're reinforcing the lie that you don't naturally deserve to be where you are. Then I would say, oh, she'll probably like, then I'll probably say her back to her second thing. Hold on, let me talk, Joan. Hold on. Because sometimes you just got like, hey, chill out. Let me get all my thoughts out real fast, Joan. Hold on. Second, you've been successful for years, girl. Years. Everybody's seen it. The evidence is there. They wouldn't even be looking at you. These white men, mind you, Joan's a black woman in a white man dominated world right now in the early 2000s. What? The evidence is there. Everybody knows that you cold at what you do. You're not fooling anyone because there's nothing to fool about them. You wouldn't be in a position that you are in. You literally earned your place because you're competent. That's the thing about imposter phenomenon. Sometimes people just forget that they're competent and where they got. If you a bum, you don't have imposter phenomenon. You're not experiencing imposter syndrome. You're just probably an imposter. You know what I'm saying? But Joan, she had everything there. She had a degree. She had climbed the spots. The colleagues was looking. Everybody's saying, high five, Joan. This is not some con game that she's thinking that's happening. It's all in her head, right? And then I would say the third thing, and this is the thing that, it's the third thing for a reason, right, is that you're not responsible for being perfect to make other people comfortable with your success. You don't owe anyone your flawless performance just because you're a black woman in like I said, a predominantly white space. And what I needed Joan to make sure that she knew when she understood was that, Joan, you are human and you are successful. And I will hope that that would impact to where she would just realize something, you know what I'm saying? And then that would lead to a transformation blueprint for Joan and to get her freedom back from imposter phenomenon. Because people might say, well, if she didn't have that imposter phenomenon, she would have not over prepared. She would have not. Ooh, you do that sometimes. You're going to over prepare. You're going to over deliver, and that might help you out. But guess what? Imposter phenomenon is a negative mental state. Please do not let anybody else confuse that with anything else they say. Yes, you might over deliver. Yes, you might get the job done, but you're always in a negative mental state. That's harsh on your mind and that's harsh on your body. Here's what Joan's healing would have looked like. I would have probably broke it up into a couple of phases here, 3 phases. I would have said phase 1, we start with what I'm going to call a strategic imperfection, right? So what that means is, Joan, you would intentionally do things at 80% instead of at 120%. And then people are like, what? She can't do that. She a black woman. What? She can't do that? She can't go at 100%? Why? Look at her colleagues. You think they going at 100%? They're probably going at 50%. So this was little things. And I'm just saying little things. Send some emails without quadruple checking them, right? Turn in a brief that is excellent but not perfect. You know what I'm saying? Just show up to an event without trying to research who all is going to be at the event. Just show up, girl. That's what I call strategic imperfection, right? You still going out. You know what I'm saying? It's like an everyday thing. You know what I'm saying? And I see this even more now. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm still a professor, y'all, but it's just like little things. You know what I'm saying? Even when I talk to students and stuff like that, even how you come up, show yourself. That was a big component. I was not one who was showing myself. But even how you get out of your bed, people gonna get out of the bed any old way. At least you get out the bed, put on some decent clothes and not wearing a bonnet. That's at least 80%. So that's where I said strategic imperfection. Phase 2, we practice what I call success without suffering. Every time, Joan, girl, you gonna achieve something, we'll make her pause and actually feel good about it for 24 hours before you move on to the next thing. Because sometimes you hit that mark and then you on to the next goal. It's not even, you don't even got no time to even deal with it. So you a goal-oriented person, right? So you don't have no anxiety about the next mountain to climb. You could just be on top of the mountain for a while and just feel it. And then the phase 3, what I would do is I'm going to, well, we had 20 minutes. I'm just about to, this is supposed to be a 20-minute video by itself, but I'm just going in on you right now, John. But you know this. But what I'm going to say to you, right? Phase 3 is that I want you to, you know, we want to talk about the difference between standards and what it means to be perfect. You know what I'm saying? What is having standards and what is being a perfectionist, right? Standards say I want to do good work. We got some standards here. You know what I'm saying? Perfectionist says if it's not perfect, I'm worthless. Y'all feel that? Y'all just see how those two energies are just different? Do y'all see that? For real. Man, let me say that. I don't want to be cussing all the time, y'all. All right, but let me say that again, all right? Standards say I want to do good work. That's a good job. Perfectionist says if it's not perfect, I'm worthless. Do you feel the difference there? I hope y'all do, because there's a difference there, right? It's okay to have standards. You don't always have to be perfect, but as long as you have those standards there, you still have something there. And this is the reason why I think it's crazy, because Girlfriends is 20 years plus old now, which is crazy. But when we think about the culture, right, why Joan's pressure was so real to everybody and why you might relate to Joan as a character is that we just got to be real about something. Joan's perfectionism wasn't just a personal anxiety, right? It wasn't just that, right? She was a black woman in corporate law, not even no regular law. I've been on TikTok looking at big law stuff for my research about this, but the black woman in the corporate law space is already crazy enough in 2025, 2020s. Imagine what it was like in the early 2000s and the 90s when she was getting her degrees and interning and stuff. The pressure to be, of course, we heard this, twice as good, to get half as much that wasn't in her head. How can that not be in your head? We told that in the black community all the time. We got to be twice as good just to get half the shit that we are already on. Oh, right to each other. That's a reality that we still in, unfortunately. So when Joan over-prepared and over-delivered, part of it was just being in survival mode, y'all. And man, it's tough, man, really thinking about this, man. I got 2 daughters thinking about it. It's just what they will have to deal with all the bullshit in this world that makes no sense, unfortunately. But part of it was a necessary navigation of systems that just wasn't designed for her success, unfortunately. But the other part, the part that never let her enjoy her achievements or even feel secure in her competence, that was imposter phenomenon. And if you're watching this, if you're a woman, you're a minority, somebody of color, anyone from an underrepresented community background, I need you to hear this. Your extra effort was real and valid. And you deserve to feel secure in what you have achieved and done. Both things can be true. And we need a wake-up call right now, right? And what success without joy, how it can actually cost you some things, right? Here's what still breaks my heart looking at Joan, or even just thinking, like I said, I got 2 daughters, thinking about them. Really, like I said, I'm a professor. I'm around black women every day because in the HBCU world, there's more women than men. That's a whole nother video. But she achieved everything she thought she wanted to. And you could argue throughout those 8 seasons, she never really got to enjoy any of it. The apartment, house, I should say, the house, the career, the respect. It was all just more pressure to maintain an impossible standard. And how exhausting is it to win and never feel like a winner? How devastating is it to succeed and still feel like a fraud? Joan was living every perfectionist nightmare, getting everything you wanted and discovering it doesn't make you feel worthy. It doesn't make you feel happy. It doesn't even make you feel fulfilled. If that's you right now, if you're successful on paper, but terrified on the inside, Joan's story is your wake-up call. I highly recommend looking at Girlfriends, y'all. Success without that inner security, right? It's not really success. It's just a high-functioning anxiety with just better benefits when you think about it. And the challenge, right, for Joan to recover from this is that, all right, for everyone seeing themselves in Joan's mirror, because like I said, I'm looking at this, but I know people that could probably relate to this. I got some homework for you this week. I want you to identify just one area where you're overperforming out of fear. Maybe you're staying late when your work is already excellent. I know somebody right now doing that, literally will stay till the end of the day just to see who else is in the office and then leave when everybody else is gone. Maybe you're over researching for meetings where you already know your stuff. Let me just check it again one more time, right? Maybe you're apologizing for taking up space in rooms where you do belong. Pick that one thing and dial it back to just good enough. Not mediocre, because you're not pushing to be mediocre around here. Just good enough. And I want you to notice what happens. Just notice that the world ain't about to end. Notice that your competence is not going to disappear. Notice that good enough for you is still better than most of people's best efforts. And you already know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. And just most importantly, I need y'all to notice how much mental energy you gain back. How you're not constantly performing perfection for an audience that they're not judging you as harshly as you think they are. And here's a message I want y'all to take away from Joan as far as how it comes with professional worth, right? Here's what Joan's entire story, entire timeline teaches us. You can be excellent without being perfect. You can be professional without being flawless, right? You can be successful without earning your place every single day. See, your worth isn't determined by your worst mistake. Your competence isn't canceled out by your imperfections. Your success isn't placed on maintaining an impossible standard, all right? That would break anyone who tried to live up to it. See, Joan, she spent 8 whole seasons learning what I want you to learn in the next past however minutes that this video has been. You already belong where you are. You already deserve what you achieved. And you definitely don't need to be perfect to be valuable. That was Joan's story. Remarkable woman. And like I said, I highly recommend Girlfriends, y'all. What I'm going to do is I'm about to take a little break, and then we about to dive into the next lawyer because I got to talk about William motherfucking Dent. And trust me, if you think Joan's perfectionism was intense, wait until we unpacked how imposter phenomenon impacts males, because it does impact males. For the longest time, they thought that imposter phenomenon was a thing that only impacted women, but only white women too. Ain't that crazy? Imposter phenomenon impacts 70% of the population. And it showed up in William in a variety of different ways. And I really want to talk about William and give him his due. So please stay along for the ride so that we can talk about William and see what we're going to learn about William, right? To see how some things he said and did was all based off a little bit of imposter phenomenon. But before we get here, man, shout out to Joan. And if you like Joan, just let me know if you really like Joan. And then also, are you a perfectionist yourself? Are you in your own prison? Do you have the actual key? Are you trying to get out, but you won't get out, even though the key is right there in your hand and you got it and you could get out and unlock it right now if you really wanted to? If you can't, let me know in the comments, please. And just one thing I just want to be clear before I talk about William. There's nothing wrong with Joan. If you are a Joan, that is okay. All right, it's not a bad thing. Please, Joan was a successful black woman. Just all this is just awareness. That's it. Once you are aware, just things look different. Your perspective changes. Recognition is just a beginning to what I would call recovery, right? You're not broken. You're nothing like that. You're just can be trapped in patterns. You know, I'm trapped in patterns right now that I'm still trying to get over. We're all trapped in some type of patterns based off how we grew up, right? And just understand that if those patterns are negative, then you need to understand that they just don't serve you anymore. And it's time to break free of those.